a trust fund is a legal instrument you could put in place so that it becomes very, very easy for you to pass down your wealth to the next generation without really going through the court process. For example, my name is Elijah Mwai. So I have properties, I have land, I have car, I have this and that. Currently, they are under my name. Yeah. So if I set up a trust fund, I will have to change them legally, following the legal process of transferring from Elijah Mwai to Elijah Mwai Trust.
Hi everyone, I hope this video finds you well. My name is Martin. In case you're here for the first time, assist in what insurance. We do civic education as well as reviews on insurance, especially within the Kenyan market. Now today we want to talk about inheritance, or the best way to give an inheritance to your children.
Yes.
And it's a very important subject that most people don't find it necessary until you hear stories about siblings who fight over the inheritance. Wanatumia pesa nyingi wasaidia by going the legal way. They go to courts, trying to battle for the assets, whereas maybe the parent or the person who left the assets would have done a better job in terms of like distributing his wealth to the children. So we normally recommend our viewers to send us questions touching on insurance, whether it's medical covers, motor insurance, pension, anything touching on insurance. We normally do videos based on the questions that you send to us. So keep sending us those questions and we'll be able to do a video for you just to help you make informed decision before you buy.
Yes.
So leo tuko na Mwai, and I know you have done a very good job in the past to explain to us about have you touched about a trust fund?
Previously we just did a highlight. Yes. So possibly today we can do some dissecting.
Exactly.
So that we can understand it in a better way.
Yes. So I want you to take us through the options that one has, whether it's a will, trust fund, or whichever other way, or which is the best way according to you of leaving an inheritance to your children. Yes.
Yeah. So thank you, and to our viewers, I hope this also presents another opportunity to learn more or to get better, because we believe in something called Kaizen, a continuous improvement. Whatever you learned yesterday, possibly today, you can improve on it. So that is why we want to touch on this subject of inheritance. And I want us to look at different ways. Basically, what you'll find is that majority of our people, especially in urban areas, they depend so much on wills, but we have seen in the past what has happened. In fact, big families, and it is in public domain, they find themselves in courts because of some disagreement, especially on matters division of assets. So we have an alternative to a will, and that is what we refer to as a trust fund. And I want you to follow me and have a look at this. So basically, a trust fund is a legal instrument you could put in place so that it becomes very, very easy for you to pass down your wealth to the next generation without really going through the court process. And basically what you will find is that a trust fund, you will find that majority of us think that trust fund actually is for the rich. But I want to demystify that. Anybody can have a trust fund. You don't necessarily need to have millions, because we have different types of a trust. But I want to take you through on what is contained, or what are the major elements under trust fund. There are basically three things that are here. Number one is the person called founder. Yeah, this guy called founder or settler. This means the same thing. Yeah, so this is the first guy under trust fund. Number two is what we call the instructions. That is the second thing. And number three is beneficiary. Beneficiaries, and of course the trustee. Yeah, beneficiaries and trustee. Those are the four main things that are contained in a trust fund. But let's focus on these guys. For a founder, he sets up everything, and his work under trust fund is to decide on two things. One, what type of a trust fund he really wants. Yeah, so we have like two major categories of trust fund. Number one, we have the irrevocable trust, and we have revocable trust. So for irrevocable trust, simply means that once the instructions are put in place, not even the founder can change. For revocable, the founder can change terms afterwards. That is basically what it means. At the same time, the founder has also another choice to make. What specific type of a trust fund he does want? We have two types of trust fund. We have what we call a cash trust, and we have something called family trust. So for cash trust, it only deals with cash, monetary, yeah. But when we talk of family, we are talking of assets, including cash, properties, businesses. Those one falls under a family trust. So those are the two key things that the founder will have to decide. But there are other things that he will also deal with. Number one is the instructions. The instruction, or what we call the instruction, are usually put under what we call the deed, the trust deed. Yeah. So under instruction, or instruction under what we call the trust deed. Now this deed is like basically the policy document. It is exactly that. But under the inheritance or under the trust fund, we don't call it policy document, we call it the trust deed. This trust deed contains different things. Number one, it contains the instruction as number one, how this money is to be shared. So that is number one. Number two is who will get it. Yes, how is it going to be divided in terms of possibly the percentages. Number two question is who. Yeah, who is going to receive, who is going to be the beneficiary. A founder could put it in this way, that every person who is named after me will get this particular percentage, or will have control of this. On the question of how, yeah, on the question of how, this one dictates specifically how this money is to be used. For example, the founder or the settler could choose to could say that this money should only be used for education. That is what we call education trust. Or this money should only be used for medical trust. Or this money can only be used under the circumstances of charity or disability. That is how we arrive at how. And then the trust deed also dictates when, and remember, the person who is doing this is the founder. So the most important person who does all this is the founder. So he also chooses when is this money or these assets, when are they to be accessed. For example, he could say that if you are under my bloodline, your education will be catered throughout until you hit 25 years of age. Once you hit the 25 years of age, we stop. So the next person under your bloodline will take over. So that is how where he says when is it to start, when is it to end. Yeah, I believe that Martin is quite clear. So under the trust deed, this is what is basically contained. How
when you talk about the founder,
yes,
in a family context,
yes,
ni mzazi,
ni mwenye ame set up the,
ni mwenye mali,
good, mwenye ame set up the trust, huyo ndio tunaita founder or settler in the language of a trust fund. So huyo ndiye anachagua, anasema my trust fund nataka ni set up in a way that siwezi reverse, or anaweza sema nataka ni set up in a way that I have the control of this trust until I die. Once I die, that's it. No one can change it. Yeah. At the same time, the same guy chooses how the money is to be used. When is it to start, and who should benefit from it? Yeah, so that is the second thing. So we have talked of trust fund having these four things: founder, instructions which are under trust deed or deed of trust, the beneficiary of who will benefit, and again it is still the founder who chooses who manages this one. Once basically what you'll find is the founder chooses, because we have quite a number of limited trustee. You could also have we could also appoint trustee from a private end or a corporate trustee. That is how the founder comes to decide. But what I would advise you is the private or the individual trustee, sometimes once you go, they can change the terms because you are no longer there. As much as we say that the trust is not to be changed whatsoever, we have seen cases where the trustee are untrustworthy, that you dictated possibly in your deed of trust that this money can only, or this property can never be sold, and they end up selling. We have seen that in our public courts, whereby now the beneficiary goes to court and they contest on that. So that is the most important thing. Then once you set up once the founder sets up the deed trust or the trust deed, whichever, okay, you can interchange it. What happens is now you start doing what we call funding the trust. You know, the essence of setting up this is so that you can pass down your wealth. So once now it's set up, you start now funding the trust, because we said this is a tool. So how you do it is that you transfer all your assets from your name to now the trust's name. For example, my name is Elijah Mwai. So I have properties, I have land, I have car, I have this and that. Currently, they are under my name. Yeah. So if I set up a trust fund, I will have to change them legally, following the legal process of transferring from Elijah Mwai to Elijah Mwai Trust. That is how we get to fund this. So you transfer all your assets now from your individual name to your company's name, because basically a trust fund is more or less of a Kamini company. Now, once you do what we call fund it, once you fund it, you now have to choose who manages them. And that is why I've said you can choose to go the corporate trustee. There are like 2 or 3 currently in our industry that does a trust fund, or you can choose to appoint trustee. That is people you believe are trustworthy and they can't change your wishes after you are long gone. So once the founder chooses who manages the trust, the next thing to ask is, what is the cost? Because what you will find is that for a cash trust, it's usually free. For family trust, it has some cost on it, but that one takes longer, and there are a lot of other parties that are involved, ranging from wakili and such. So that one may take a bit of time. That is why it might be costlier as compared to a will. But of course, some of you I know are asking, what are the advantages of using trust fund as compared to a will? So the very first advantage for a trust fund is that, number one, there is total asset privacy. A trust fund does not go to a public court. It is resolved from within always. So you bypass all those court costs or costs related to filing application of court cases, because it's 100% privately resolved. Number 2 benefit is on tax. Remember, once you die, all your properties becomes doesn't have the owner, quote unquote. So what you'll find is that during the process of transfer, you incur some cost, especially what we call the duty cost, and you might find that 4% is what is usually charged. For example, you could be having an estate of 100 million. You can count 4% going to tax. That's a humongous amount. So at the same time, you have some kind of control. As long as you are alive, because you have the liberty to change who manages and who gets what, you have kind of control until the moment you die. So those are some of the advantages, but some disadvantages is that it takes some time to set up a trust fund. But for cash trust, that is a straightforward process. We can actually do it in one day, but for family trust, it takes some time to do it. Number 2 is it's a little bit expensive as compared to a will. It is you will find that some charges 300,000, 400, depending with the company. Another disadvantage of a trust fund is that if you appoint a private trustee, sometimes there is a risk of mismanagement. They can change the terms, and you find that what you had designated for your dearest beneficiaries, sometimes they don't really get the actual benefits for that. And at the same time, it is complex. So basically, that is what is contained under a trust fund. But the most important thing is that you can increase the value of your trust by 10 times by combining it with something we call life cover. For example, you could say this. You could say that, yes, I have set up this is my trust fund. Remember, this is a separate entity from you as an individual. So what you will find is that it has all the under what we call the assets. Yes, yeah, under what we call the asset, we could be having properties, we could be having life insurance, we could be having pension, we could be having what we call cash in bank. Yeah, so how you increase the value of trust fund times 10 is by incorporating this. But I believe there are a lot of people who are asking, how do I make sure that my pension, my cash, my insurance goes to the trust fund? In fact, the trust fund allows you, or how do I put it? If, for example, you have a life insurance and afterward you form a trust fund, remember you could be having it in 2-3 different companies, and possibly you had put your dependents as the ultimate beneficiary. You just need to change that and say, now the beneficiary of my life insurance is not my wife or my husband or my child, but my trust fund. That is how you do it. So you could be looking like this. This is you. Then you have your spouse here, and both of you have like 1, 2, 3 children. You have like 3 children. So the most important thing you can do to make sure that this trust fund never runs out is by taking life insurance for each of you. So that this is you, let's say you have a 10 million cover over your head, your spouse 10 million, each child 5 million, 5 million, 5 million. So what happens is this: the moment you die, there is 10 million that is put under trust fund. This ensures that the money never gets depleted. Now, when the spouse dies, there is another 10 million. So you have 20 million if, God forbid, something happens and both of you dies. Now this money can be utilized by the next generation and next generation. So every time a family member possibly dies, the trust fund gets filled up. Yeah, so you could find that from you, maybe for the next 10 or 20 generations, they don't have to struggle with the basics like education, possibly monthly payout. That is why it is very, very important to incorporate trust fund with the life insurance, because it's obvious that at one point you will die. So, and once you do this, instead of you leaving some debts, that one helps you to replenish your trust fund.